Hello. Kenny, is that you? All right, so we're about to start. Everyone, welcome. And what we're doing today. So today is the.
Yeah, hello, Yuri?
Yeah.
Yuri?
Can you hear me?
What I did was my fault. I was just moving stuff around to clear off the desk, and I disconnected you. I'm sorry, but I'm here.
Well, in case we get disconnected, I'll just give you a call back. All right?
What you can do, yeah, just give me a call back. Again, just apologies, just moving stuff around. I lost you that way. Okay.
Yeah.
But we can do this. And okay, good. Looking forward to it, buddy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So give me like 10 or 15 minutes to talk through my announcements, and we'll get back to that. So
yeah. Okay. Good.
So everyone, today we have a special treat. Ken Behr, my colleague and my partner in law, not in crime. We we are doing today United States Mexico Canada Free Trade Agreement, which is a predecessor to successor to NAFTA, which is has been outdated in light of Trump administration, as well as many other things. But let me go to announcements first, and then we'll dive into the things which are of importance to the future as well as the past. All right, so going to.
Yeah, Yuri, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kenny. You there?
Okay, I apologize. When you call me, make sure you call me on the office line. You get that at 201-868-8801. That sounds a lot better. I'll pick up, and then we'll take this wherever you want to go. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Just give me 10 minutes or something. Because I had folks asking me for things, and I need to give it to them, give them what I promised.
All right, I'll hang up my cell, and then you call me at 201-868-8801, and we'll take it from there. Thanks a lot.
Yep, will do.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, so back to announcements. All right, so we have customs broker license exam coming up, which would be on October 8th. And for those folks who are taking it, they should know that next week there will be another Webex broker exam webinar. It will be taking place on September 23rd, which is next week. And I encourage everyone to go. All you need to go is click on here. I don't think there is a registration required, but in any case, you should be able to check out your system to make sure that you guys are good as far as you can you know that you can join, because if you can't at the last minute, all technical difficulties always arise, and because of this it's just easier for you to log in. There was a webinar which I visited last time. This took place in August, I believe. Let me see. And it was, yeah, August 19th. It was kind of helpful, but the takeaway from the folks that asked questions and that there were discussions, I gathered that a lot of individuals made their focus on substance, but not on a process. So it's very important, and these webinars, they're about process. So it's very important for everyone to really get on the practice exam, to really grind down what to expect as far as what they can uh, see when they come to the customs broker license exam examination, because time will be very much precious. Every minute will count. So if you can eliminate spending that minute by preparing yourself here before the exam, then it is another minute that you can spend towards the actual exam itself, toward thinking through the question, toward doing your research in the limited time that you have. Again, this is a race for time. This is not something which requires you to be a rocket scientist. Nevertheless, it's very important to come prepared. All right, so those folks that, oh, another important point. The stuff that will be tested on a customs license broker exam include the materials, and they're posted right here on the page. HTSUS 2019 basic, no supplements, and Title 19 Code of Federal Regulations 2019 revised as of April 1st. So usually this is when the revisions take place. So this is something which is they take place every year. The Code of Federal official Code of Federal Regulations publications get out. Different titles, different dates, but for Title 19, which is the title that you'll be tested on, is getting out in April. Sometimes with delay I've seen, but usually the April is a goal. So now I had questions like, okay, where do I get this stuff? So hopefully, well, there's two ways you can get it. One way is you can go to the CBP, not the CBP, but the GPO bookstore. The another way, which is preferred way, is because this is a government stuff, you are able to download it for free and print it out. And the reason it's better is because you'll be able to use it as your career advances, because you make notes, you can take out pages, you can insert the other pages. So for that you'll need, of course, the printer or the print shop that will do this for you, and the binding equipment, which is also very important. Because if you get the wrong binding equipment, you won't be able to flip through pages correctly, and it can be a logistical nightmare for your research. So where do you get the Title 19 if you are going with the print your own copy option? Let me show you. So Code of Federal Regulations, Title 19 parts, and there are 200 parts. Not all of them are workable. They're out here. So those of you who are watching, I'm putting this in the chat. All right. So that's the Title 19. We have how many? We have 1122. So 1122 pages. Okay. So I put it in the chat. I put the link in the chat box so everyone can see it. The next one is 141 to 199. So 141 to 99, I also put it in the chat box. It's a PDF, official GPO. GPO is a government printing office version. So here you have authentication, and that goes for CFR. The link for HTSUS, which is of relevance, specifically 2019 basic edition, is right here. I cannot provide you the full link because the full link prompts you to save it right on your computer or your device. However, I can give you the link where you can click on a full document copy, so that way you can also print it out. So I'm putting this in the chat box for you to access as well. All right. So that's for the stuff that have been requested by people who are preparing for the customs license broker examination. But if you heard my earlier conversation with Martin Ken Behr, who will be joining us in a bit, doing the USMCA talk. The point about the free trade agreements is that the free trade agreement that you folks will be tested on, the USMCA free trade agreement hasn't made it to the books yet. So that's an issue, and that's a big issue because in a way you will be tested on the stuff which is outdated. And this is a problem because NAFTA historically has been a huge part of the free trade agreement customs broker license exam questions, and this is something which you may not, it is something that will not be useful to you as you pass, but nevertheless those are the rules. I haven't heard anything to the contrary that customs will not be using NAFTA on a customs broker exam. So what we decided to do, and by we I'm talking about myself and Ken, is to make sure that you have resources available to educate yourself. And we started rolling out the if you go to LawCustoms.com, which is the main vehicle for my outreach, what we started doing is we started rolling out the latest exam, the latest topics dedicated to NAFTA. So those are the video material which we teach as a part of customs broker license preparation. The latest one, which was very extensively covered in the lectures, is April 2017, and those lectures are available. We'll be rolling them out in TUS, and what you need to do is just go to lawcustoms.com, and if you click on the heading, you'll be able to see that the links are right there. Another way you can access this material, we also do the outreach through the social media. We're talking about, if you look to your right top corner, you'll see there is a link to the Twitter, there is a link to the Facebook, there is a link to the YouTube, and there is a link to the Vimeo. So we'll also be posting those things through those outlets as well. The idea is to make sure that whatever devices you are accustomed to, you are able to use it to educate yourself and make sure that you come prepared, because apparently NAFTA is part of the exam. On top of that, in addition to the video materials, we also have stuff which is follow along outline. So it's right here. If you click on it, you have NAFTA outline, which is being used as a base material throughout the lecture. And the folks who have attended the customs broker license exam, they the classes, I mean, at least on my end, they know that I usually provide the outline, and then outline is really the skeleton of the discussion, and then we expand. And besides the outline, we also have Martin Behr was also kind to provide the outline that he uses to teach, well, he used to use to teach NAFTA. And Martin Behr is a professor at Baruch, and he, um, he teaches international trade, international law classes. Baruch is a part of the City University of New York system, and a lot of those items that he teaches there are very much relevant in the customs broker license exam. My understanding is that this particular study guide that Ken was kind to share, it also has customs broker license exam questions at the end. Let me see. The sample, yes, the sample questions at the end. So those are materials that they're very much relevant. We'll be rolling out those streams, and um, those streams, of course, they were not uh, asking any compensation, but we're only asking for you guys to be successful at the customs broker license exam, and um, make yourself available to as much information as you can. So that goes for um, for the NAFTA. You'll be seeing, so we'll be rolling them out in twos. So far we rolled out. Let me see. So far we rolled out four slides, four clips, and there are 31 in total. And the idea is to roll them out in twos, hopefully every day as they become ready and available. So keep that in mind. These are additional resources for you. All right. So going back to the other news, which are news for mostly. Let me see. So this is no longer necessary. We can close it out. So the links you have, the CFR you have, HTS you have. All right. So going back to the news topic, which are current events, if you will. So this particular one drew the attention because everyone is aware of coronavirus, and everyone knows that there was a huge shortage of supplies for various reasons, and because of the huge shortage of supplies, we really have um, crisis on our hands, and because of the and now we're talking about almost every state. So we saw various actions that are taking place because a lot of the PPE, personal protective equipment, is being produced outside of the United States. A lot of people saw this as an opportunity to jump on and really attend to the opportunity and get themselves into the import-export business, which in a way put them in the game of regulations and customs, because not customs is an agency which is enforcing many regulatory portions of other agencies, and we're talking about federal agencies. There are also state agencies involved as well. So this just came out. This took place in on September 14th, and with the article itself, and it describes very well what is going on in the world uh, of customs, because they really go into the detail and they tell you how they operate. So first of all, we can see that the detention was made because they thought that the masks were believed to be counterfeit. So this means that we know that it's not really it's the trademark concern. I don't think there is patents involved, but usually the counterfeit rubric involves issues of trademarks where the importer cannot prove that he has a right to import the trademarked article. I think the good example in this case would be 3M articles. So if you bring in 3M article, then and 3M is huge in producing masks, then 3M is usually all over the product. So the question from customs is, well, this is 3M product. Show me the license agreement that allows you to bring the stuff in. So that was a starting point. Then we went to something which involves CDC. So CDC mask was sent to CDC, and CDC found out that the masks was below the generally accepted standard principles. So that was an issue. Now, if you read it, and this is important to talk this through, to pay attention to those sentences, because if you are the importer or you're a customs broker, you must be aware, and we probably need to do a separate stream on this. You must be aware of the standards for the regulatory standards which are required for products. So PPE is hot. The likelihood, if you are the freight forwarder of a decent size, or even a specialized freight forwarder, or the importer, you really cannot ignore this stuff, because this is really forms the checklist, because you don't want to be in the shoes of those folks who had the stuff seized. You want to go through the due diligence. So what goes on here? So the CDC said those are the below standard, but it wasn't the CDC why it was confiscated. It was confiscated by the Food and Drug Administration, or it was rather denied entry, because by the Food and Drug Administration, because they did not, let me see, what would be the right words that they used. They said that those the shipment that was seized, I believe it's in the shipment that was seized, it was under the misbranding rubric by the United States Food and Drug Administration. So pretty much, and Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, they have extensive dedicated web page that involves the pinpoint explanation of what you are required to do when you importing the PPE. There is also other stuff as well, but based on this article alone, what we saw is the example of you had customs, and within customs you had anti-terrorism contraband enforcement team, then you had Homeland Security investigations. It's not really customs, it's within the Department of Homeland Security, but they mostly do the criminal stuff. And you had the CDC, you had the FDA, you had labs, and you had all those agencies. So you had like 4 agencies which were collaborating in this. So this means that this issue is priority, and those folks that follow more closely the PPE seizures and the treatment under the PPE, they also would notice, I don't have that on the screen right now, but another agency stepped into this, and that's the Department of Justice. Local government authorities too, under the rubric of price gouging. Now, alleging that you gouging the price because during the time of emergency you try to rip people off, basically. That's the rubric over it. There is lots of issues with that rubric, but basically that's what's going on. So using that rubric, they just take the stuff and they seize it. So you have to prove that you're not price gouging. So there was a big news brief by the Department of Justice that came out and talked about this, talked about the numbers. So this is another thing that is going on inside the country, not just at the border. But the 500,000 counterfeit N95 mask example also means, even though the DOJ Department of Justice was not involved into this, this is a very high possibility if all else fails. So keep this in mind when you're considering the imports of these things. All right, going back to the list of announcements, we also have the forced labor rubric. So for those folks that attended the trade symposium last week for 3 days, Customs held trade symposiums with various panels involving high-level officials, representatives from the industry, and they pretty much talked about the big stuff. What's going on? They talked about the stuff that really hot today in the world of customs and international trade. And one big one was forced labor. And during our one of our first streams, I think it was in August, we did discuss the situation about Uyghur. We know that in in July we had Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act of 2020, which came into the effect, and under that act, Congress asked Treasury and State Department, I believe, to make findings and findings about the abuses. So it was presumptively made that abuses are there, and now you have Customs stepping in and making sure that folks who are importing the things are, especially from that region, are being denied those imports because of forced labor issues. So we started this off, and it's now coming to the fore from the forefront of State Department and Treasury Department to the world of Customs and Border Protection. So this stuff is relevant, and the Uyghur region, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, is a high-risk region for importation into the United States. So the takeaway here would be, okay, so you're bringing stuff from China. Most likely you are, if you're doing the imports, and especially the consumption products. And you'll be asked to prove that the stuff is not coming from this region. So this means paperwork, documentation, affidavits, many other things which will establish the burden of proof. So and burden of proof would be in this case, in many cases, as far as customs is concerned, they would issue you CBP form 29, CBP form 28. Well, 29 would be worse than 28, but where they say, show us. We want to make sure that you're not get sourcing product from forced labor, and if you have papers right there, right away, you'll be in better position than other folks who do not. All right, so that's a reminder of standoff in the Ugu region. So another thing is, and again, I'm not affiliated with those folks at all, but I think of them very highly because they produce a good, high quality products, and especially in the area of exports, they produce reports, and this time they're inviting everyone on October 15th. To my understanding, this is there is no charge to sign up and attend their intellectual discussion about what's going on in the world of exports, what's going on in the world of sanctions. So, and even if you are not practicing in the area of export controls, if you're just pretty much doing imports, I think it's very important to keep your eyesight beyond your immediate surrounding, beyond your table, if you will, and be able to have a higher horizon of what's going on in the movement of goods, because movement of goods allows you to understand, more or less get a picture of what's going on in the world in general. And this is a good opportunity to do that. What I'll do is in the chat window I will provide the link for those folks who are interested, and so that way they can sign up. It's taking place on October 15th. So this is for the announcements. All right. So now I was going to, I think Ken is calling. So now I was going to talk about the FDA, but we have very cool, I think, and very timely presentation by my colleague Ken, which would show how NAFTA itself has transformed into the United States-Canada Free Trade Agreement, so that way we can have a transition, if you will, into what's happening into the relationship of the three countries. We're talking about the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So let me see if I can get a hold of Ken, and if I can, we can get moving.
Ken speaking.
Hi Ken, it's Yuri.
Yeah, hey Yuri, what's going on, buddy?
So I went through my introductory remarks about customs broker exam, about the NAFTA rollouts that we're doing, using my videos, using your material, and I also kind of express my commiseration to students who are studying, preparing for the customs broker license exam, because NAFTA itself is out, but it will be tested on a customs broker license exam, at least according to the materials, because materials are, that will be used are still being codified for NAFTA. But then again, I think you can prove us wrong, because I did a sneak preview of your presentation, and it does sound like that a lot of foundational material at the very least were taken from NAFTA and transformed into USMCA. Yes, it is more tough. It is more. It requires more attention to details as far as percentages, the bottom line is concerned. But the rules, the basic rules, I'm talking about the de minimis, the country of origin, like original value content, the special provisions for automotive products, and all these other components that were part of NAFTA, they found themselves into the way of USMCA. Is that good observation, or am I wrong here?
Yeah, that's a very good. You gave the skinny on it. You're absolutely right. That is to summarize. Yeah, NAFTA, the new NAFTA, the USMCA is called NAFTA 2.0. And when NAFTA was first being looked at for changes by the present administration, Donald Trump's administration, many people were alarmed. They thought there would be monumental revisions, monumental changes. Fortunately, there really haven't been too many changes. There are some changes there, with the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, that people have to be aware of. One, of course, has to do with the form that many people have been using under NAFTA, Customs and Border Protection Form 434, the NAFTA certificate. That's different right now. But, there are some changes to the USMCA, but not nearly, changed as much as people thought it was going to be. It's not that different from NAFTA 2.0, but there are things that have to be borne in mind when you're dealing with Mexico or Canada. And yeah, it's here right now. Just realized, too, that NAFTA rules still do apply for those entries that were made before July 1st, 2020. The old NAFTA rules, regulations are still in effect. So there are entries out there that are going to be governed by NAFTA. And for those entries that were made after July 1st, 2020, the USMCA is now in effect, and those regulations apply.
You mean July 1st, 2020? But it's, so when can you stop claiming NAFTA? I think you have that in your presentation, though, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to go over that, yes. I mean, again, NAFTA, you're subject to inquiries if you happen to be involved in exporting and importing United States, Canada, Mexico. You may get inquiries from different countries, and that's something that you've got to take into account. That's why when you make the certification that's necessary under the USMCA, you've got to pay attention to it. Also, please realize that the U.S. government has indicated that it's going to provide people with sort of a buffer, that it's not going to be too enforcement-minded until, say, January. And then the United States government has indicated that it tends to be a lot more enforcement-minded. So right now, I see you have the presentation up on the screen.
Yeah, well,
we can go through this and just emphasize to people what they should be aware of right now. And again, changes, because of the USMCA, are also affecting things like the Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the United States. And people can learn where to go for information about the USMCA.
Okay, so if I'm going to, well, this is you, very great bio, and speaking of the presentation itself, so July 1st, I guess, is the date which 2020, which was the summer. Everyone was talking about coronavirus, but this has actually happened, right?
It's already happened, and when things happen during the summertime, lots of times people are on vacation. They're really thinking about things other than customs law and regulation. But this is something that anybody who's involved in international trade needs to know about. Again, if they're doing business with the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, they've got to be aware of the fact that it really is in effect right now. NAFTA's gone, except in certain circumstances if entries have been made before July 1st. But right now, got to pay attention to the USMCA. I take it you've been pointing out to the audience, if you're sitting for the Customs Brokers exam, the USMCA is not yet going to be touched upon, but it will in the future. And right now, what's very important for the students to understand is NAFTA. I don't know how much emphasis again, Customs and Border Protection is going to place on NAFTA with the latest examination, but again, got to know both NAFTA and then NAFTA 2.0, otherwise known as the USMCA.
Yeah, I was trying to merely point out to folks who prepare that they're really not wasting their time, because a lot of those things, the bones, if you will, not the meat, will stay around. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, there is, and then one thing Customs has done for the importing public, and for those people involved in the international trade community, is provided instructions, and they can be had by going to the Customs website. They're called the Interim Implementing Instructions, and you can find out what has to be done, what you need to do if you're involved in international trade involving the United States, Mexico, or Canada. And for Customs, I have to compliment Customs. The language that's being used is pretty straightforward, and things are fairly understandable, which is good.
And they also, I was announcing the trade symposium last week. They also dedicated the whole panel solely to USMCA, where they made the general message was that this is huge, and this is current, because many of the panelists seem to be in agreement that NAFTA outlived itself, and in light of political horizon, and because of that, it's time to go into the USMCA. But as far as enforcement is concerned, they really said that they are not going to be they are not going to play Hitler, if you will. They will take it one step at a time. They will roll out advisory opinions, maybe the seminars, and try really to take this approach on an informed compliance basis, as opposed to writing your ticket basis.
Yes, that's correct. Customs has done this with regard to legislation in the past, with regard to, people may remember the Foreign Trade Statistics Regulations, and they became the Foreign Trade Regulations. We're talking about the exporting side of the house. And when people export goods from the United States, in many cases they must file what's known as electronic export information. And we still call it the Shipper's Export Declaration, even though that form hasn't been around for a while. But many years ago, Customs did give the trading community a break. Customs put the trade community on notice that it was no longer going to accept the paper 7525s, the Shipper's Export Declarations, and based upon audits that Customs had conducted, Customs determined that when it came to these export filings, they were roughly 65% in error, 65-70% major errors. And the Customs said, listen, we know you haven't been paying attention. We really haven't been taking this seriously, but we're going to. Right now we have informed compliance, but in the near future, we're talking about a year from now, we're going to hold exporters for downs, and we're going to have enforced compliance. So people will put on notice, and the same thing is happening with regard to the USMCA. The one thing that it does seem to be jamming up a lot of people right now, or puzzling people, is the certificate that has to be used with regard to the USMCA. I will provide a certificate to you, Yuri, and then you can provide it to the attendees, anybody who's interested, and it's a certificate that's supposed to be used. It contains the magic language that is now required under the USMCA.
Yeah, in fact, when I went and attended the presentation by the panelists from the U.S. Customs, they did mention the fact that there was a lot of unease from the trade because they got accustomed to this rigid form, which was required, and now it's freestyle, just provide data elements, and they were looking for something uniform. So they kept asking and asking for something which is can establish the baseline without making something subjective, if you will.
Yeah, what the Customs has done is required more magic language, legal language, and I will be very happy to send the form to you, and you can make it available to the attendees, people who are listening to the live live stream. And then what I will also do when it comes to the instructions, the implementing instructions PDF form, I'll send them over to you as well. And anybody's listening live stream today, again, you can make them available to the people tuning in right now.
Right, and I think you have the links down the line. So can I go to the next slide?
Yeah, sure. Right. I mean, right. Again, you have to pay attention to instructions, and CBP does really believe in informed compliance, and then you as importers and exporters, you have to exercise reasonable care. Customs has never really defined reasonable care, but the gist of it is you can't make mistakes, and Customs is going to go easy with regard to the USMCA for a while, probably figure another 4 or 5, maybe 6 months, but then people will have to be on board. They will have to be adhering to these new regulations. And a lot of what Customs is doing is contained in the PowerPoint presentation that Yuri has up on the screen right now. And again, there will be changes, and there are going to be changes to some things like the Harmonized Tariff Schedule, the General Note number 11, etc. But again, the changes could have been bigger, and that's what people had been anticipating. However, one issue that does seem to be causing consternation and sending many people into a state of despair is that certificate, and we'll provide a copy of what you should be using. Okay? So again, forget about the old one, the 434 form, Customs CBP form that can't be used anymore. But again, the administration had promised changes. A lot of people are very unhappy with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which was put into force quite a while ago. That was put into force, actually it came in 1993, went into effect in 1994, and that also at the same time we got the Modernization Act, and that allowed Customs to become more computerized. Customs is very computerized as far as federal agencies are concerned, and if you're involved in international trade, you've got to remember that. We really don't use paper forms anymore. Everything is being looked at in terms of real time. And again, not only is U.S. government active, but so is the Canadian government, and so is the Mexican government. They're very interested in NAFTA and making certain that everybody is adhering to the requirements. So,
Kenny, when I attended the panel, one of the individuals from custom, maybe from commerce, I don't remember, but they mentioned the portion where they went through the kind of like a timeline, if you will,
yes,
of the significant events, and U.S. Customs Modernization Act, or MOD Act for short, it was on that list. What's significant about it, for those people who are wondering what are we talking about, I see is that it switched the responsibility from for being responsible for the compliance from customs to the importer of records. So they're responsible for classification, they're responsible for correct declaration, and before that it was a game of cat and mouse, if you will.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, Yuri, I had been with Customs before that time, and some old timers may remember hearing C&V, classification and value, and Customs made determinations with regard to that. But the Modernization Act changed not only Customs or authorized Customs to do all kinds of things, it also shifted responsibility. And the importer of records is now responsible for such things as classification. Even if no money is at stake, we're talking about maybe something comes in free of duty, you, the importer, still must classify correctly. Customs, one of Customs' primary missions, well, it's perhaps its primary mission is to protect the homeland, but Customs is really interested in trade information. It wants accurate, complete information. It wants it in a timely fashion. So you can get hit with a big penalty, even if there's no duty at stake. And again, why is Customs doing this? Because this is what the U.S. Congress wants. The U.S. government has to know what's coming into the country, and it does so by use of the Customs Form 7501, the entry summary, and it needs to know what's going out of the country. And that's done through the electronic export information, largely through that. And then Government has an idea what's coming in and going out. So customs will hold people for downs, even if there are no duty implications. And as the audience knows, when it comes to exporting, the U.S. Constitution prohibits export tariffs, so we don't have that problem there. But customs is just as aggressive on the exporting side of the house. Customs gets to write penalties for export violations. I mean, yes, information does go into the Department of Commerce's Census Bureau, but if you get a penalty, it's going to be written by Customs, CBP. And quite often those penalties are for misclassification. And it doesn't make any difference if there's no money at stake. What matters is that Customs gets information in a timely fashion, and it's got to be correct, and it's got to be accurate. And anytime you complete any kind of paperwork, you have to, or electronic transmission, it's like raising your right hand. And what you're really saying is, I swear I'm telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And Customs, when it comes to reasonable care, says, well, if you're going to be involved in international trade, you should consult with some experts, and that could be a customs attorney. It could be, of course, a licensed U.S. customs broker. It could even be a CPA who's got or an accountant who's got some kind of trade background. And then there's a funny kind of person called a trade consultant, and it's up to you to find out what the trade consultant knows or doesn't know. But by doing so, by consulting these people, you're exercising what's known as reasonable care, which is a requirement under the Modernization Act right now.
Well,
so you've got to know, and then Customs provides a website, and it does a pretty good job. With its website, you have informed compliance publications, and then, of course, Customs right now is addressing NAFTA, and you're going to be able to have these instructions. They'll be provided by Yuri's office. Contact him for that. So, yeah, there's a lot to know, and a lot of what goes on in international trade is not rocket science, but you do have to take the time out. You do have to devote some time to this stuff, and you can't be hesitant to ask questions. And if you don't understand something, get answers. And you as businessmen and businesswomen, if you need answers, get them in writing. And remember that when you're dealing with Customs or you're dealing with any other federal agency, if you get information over the phone or even face-to-face, that's nice. But if you want something to be binding, you need to get it in writing. And even with with the USMCA and so on, you can get determinations in writing from the government, not just the U.S., but you can get it from Canada, and you can also get them from Mexico. And this is what you should be doing. This is what you want. You want some degree of certainty. Certainty matters. You want to be able to concentrate on your business. All right?
Kenya, so can I interrupt what you've been saying by several remarks? Number one, I just put up on the screen the informed compliance publication that you were talking about.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And informed compliance publication, if you read the first 2 pages, all of them pretty much say that this is about Modernization Act requirement where they do their duty and they inform, if you will, the public about their position on certain points of customs law. Now,
Yes.
And maybe it's my mistake, but if I recall correctly, Modernization Act was enacted as a part of NAFTA back in 1993.
That's correct. That was in December, and then it went into effect in 1994. That's correct.
So by saying that NAFTA is no longer around, does it mean the MOD Act is no longer around?
No, it just means it's been revitalized. The Modernization Act, which is part of the NAFTA legislation, stands on its own. That's still in place. And the Modernization Act, as you know, has antecedents. It comes from many things in the past, like the Tariff Act of 1930. And things get built upon. Sometimes things are taken away. But Customs has been one of the first agencies in the government to really hold to the notion computerize or perish. At one time, Customs had a commissioner by the name of Von Raab, and he was serious about that. And Customs, in many ways, became really the first, what you could say, truly computerized or a very computerized agency. It's just not possible to do things by way of forms anymore. Forms still exist. Customs is the most form-happy agency in the federal government, but information is now transmitted electronically. And that's great. Can save time. But you also have to realize that whatever you're sending in is going to be looked at, to some degree or another. And you have to, when you're providing information to the government, you have to provide the correct information. You're put on the honor system. This this is what the Mod Act did. It turned Customs basically into what its sister agency, the Internal Revenue Service, was and still is. You're on a system, and Customs is going to take you at your word until it has some kind of reason not to believe you or not to take you on your word, and then it can ask for you to come up with evidence, with proof that that you've been doing the right thing. And that's why it's important to understand regulations and processes and so on, so you can do the right thing. And if you have a company that does not yet have a compliance program for import, export, or NAFTA, do so. Get some kind of program together. It doesn't have to be, in many cases, terribly complicated. You can add to it. But if your company does get into some kind of trouble, what can make a big difference to, say, an agent who's looking at things, or an auditor, or people people with customs or export agencies, whatever. And customs is an export agency in many ways too. Just show that you're trying to do the right thing, and that you should have a compliance program. And again, you've got to take the time out to train people. Fortunately, there are places that you can now go for information, and it's free. And Yuri has put something up on a screen. He pointed out Informed Compliance Publications, ICP. And all you need to go is to the Customs website, www.cbp. First screen that comes up is going to have a tab on it. It's called Trade. Click on Trade. Another screen is going to come up. Look to the left. You're going to see Laws and Regulations. Click that on. Another screen comes up, and you're going to see Informed Compliance Publications. And there are publications for just about everything. You can learn about the entry process. You can learn about documentation. You can learn about valuation. Classification is a big deal. But know that it's there. It's free, and it's not just for the novice importer. It's for some people who've been importing for a while, and many times people get sloppy. Many times people have bad habits, or sometimes they're doing things incorrectly. And when you ask why you're doing it this way, people will say, that's the way I was trained. That's how it's always been done. People, sometimes just have to reassess what they're doing. The other thing I can tell you, if you're going to be getting involved in trade involving United States, Mexico, Canada, make certain that you're using international commercial terms, INCO terms, correctly. That's INCO terms 2020. And if you want to find out more about that, you go to the ICC website, okay, International Chamber of Commerce.
Kenny, just to follow up on your comments about Informed Compliance Publication, we have a link on our website, LawCustoms.com. If you go to the lower right corner, there will be direct link to those publications right there. So if you click on there,
very, very important.
you'll be like directed, so that and the reason is because in LawCustoms links, they're usually based on things that I work a lot with, you work a lot with, and this is something which is very much relevant, because it's also provides the important stuff of not only to us but also to the folks who are interested in the international trade and customs matters.
Oh, sure. And the other thing, when it comes to classification, whether you're importing or exporting, have to understand the Harmonized system. And on the inbound side, we're going to be using that great big book. If you print it out, it's about 16 pounds, the Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the United States.
Yes.
And if you're exporting, you're going to be using the Schedule B. I recommend to people, use the Harmonized Tariff Schedule US for imports, Schedule B book for exports. But remember, if you're dealing with NAFTA, now it's USMCA, classification is important, and you cannot be giving the wrong classification numbers when it comes to that certificate. You've got to provide the international numbers at the international level. That's a 6-digit level. You can't mess up with the form that's now being used. So again, classification, it's really important, even though it doesn't involve tariffs, it doesn't involve money. You're going to be held for downs if you don't get classification down properly.
Kenny, so can I get you back to your presentation about the United States-Canada Free Trade Agreement? And I think you, going into the later slides, I think you're going into the details now. So
next time I start the presentation over some of the big changes, and one of them you see on the screen in front of you. You can look at your monitor. Merchandise processing fee refunds will not be made on post-import claims. You can read about this, but this is something that it's going to receive a lot more attention, and then there's going to be implementation. There's going to be comments made by Customs, and Customs is sort of feeling its way. It's getting feedback from the trading community with regard to some of the changes, and Customs, quite often.
Yeah, I remember that part of NAFTA we even had this Excel spreadsheet which we used to calculate the NPF refunds for NAFTA purposes, and even they made its way through to the questions on the customs license broker examination, which is coming up too.
You always find with the customs brokers exam there will always be a lot of questions asked about NPF. Yes, on every examination. And then the other thing, if you're importing goods into the United States, what's the number one reason that people get into trouble, importers do, when it comes to the customs officers making an examination? It's marking. Okay? Customs has its own set of marking regulations, and if you go to Part 134 of the customs regulations, you can read about them. But there are also regulations with regard to the USMCA or NAFTA, and it's just something that you need to be aware of, that marking really is very important. Okay? And something you can't forget, and the number one problem for importers.
Okay, so and that also made its way to the customs license broker exam as well. But marking, so are they no longer around, or what? What's the deal with marking?
No, it is. It's just that right now, from what I understand, the feedback I get, this really hasn't been too much happening in terms of violations or making determinations as violations. It seems to be somewhat ambiguous right now. Customs is expected to come out with more with regard to marking requirements, etc. But it's just something I want to bring to the attention of people right now. And you realize, too, if you're going to be, again, sitting for the customs broker's examination, you need to know Part 134 of the customs regulations inside out. And you realize, too, that there are certain items that do not have to be marked country of origin, and it's a code-called J list, but they're containers to whatever the goods are coming in. And then, marking is very important. And again, when I had been customs, I have been office, I've been part of field operations. I have been a uniformed officer, also an import specialist. Yeah, marking is terribly important when it comes to importing and exporting.
All right, so one way folks can get to the marking is by going to the LawCustoms website and go to the, I prefer an official version because it's up to date. Then they click on Title 19, which is a title dedicated to customs issues for by and large. And you go to 141, and marking is which one is it, Kenya?
I'll go to 134. 134 is what you're going to need to know inside out for the broker's exam.
134.
Yeah, 134.
Let me see. So it's all the way down. So country origin marking.
Yeah.
And the key thing over here. So if you mark it incorrectly, you pay 10% duty.
Yeah.
I do not know if that's still around.
Oh yeah, there's quite a lot of problems, and every once in a while. The other thing too is a lot of people in the audience may not realize it, but if they get jammed up really for the first time with customs when it comes to marking, quite often what you should do is ask for a waiver. You're going to talk to customs, get a hold of an import specialist, and you might want to say, listen, this won't happen again. Sometimes I've done it. I did it in the past myself. I gave a waiver. I just let it go. It can happen. Doesn't hurt to ask. It may not happen often anymore. But again, pay attention to marking. I mean, you could spend hours on this stuff, but very important. And again, for NAFTA, you have to realize that we have 3 languages being used. We have English, we have Spanish, and we have French. And it's very important. And when you bring goods into the country, you got to remember that when it comes to marking, you have to indicate where the country of origin of the goods, where they were made, where they were produced. And it's got to be in English, and it's got to be, the marking has to be conspicuous, and it's got to be legible, and it's got to last long enough that the ultimate purchaser, the buyer, is going to know where it comes from. The Tariff Act of 1930 actually allows you to discriminate. If you happen to be a buyer, would-be buyer, prospective buyer, the Tariff Act allows that. You can discriminate. And again, that's why there's markings on goods that are imported. Not everything has to be marked, but the containers do. Some items don't. But this is something that you're going to be tested on, and Customs loves to spend a lot of time on marking questions on the Customs Brokers exam.
All right. So the J-list exceptions, all that other good stuff, they are still around.
Yep,
And
they're still around.
I see that.
That's in addition. That's not really part of NAFTA, the USMCA, but this is the number one problem for importers. It happens to be marking pursuant to the regulations found in Part 134 of the Customs regulations. Always a problem.
Okay, so I recall that when making an entry back into my entry writing days, I used to declare CA, I used to declare MX, but now I guess according to your presentation, we have a whole different symbol, which is S.
That's correct. Yes, S is the indicator.
So there is no discrimination against Mexico versus Canada. It's just S and S plus.
Yes.
Wow.
And you can find that. I think that's contained in. I just off the top of my head, I don't have the book in the Harmonized. I think that's General Note 11, but that's where you can find this stuff. And again, when it comes to exporter producer certifications, do pay attention to that. And as I mentioned, URI will be able to provide to you a copy of what certification is supposed to look like, one that has the magic language in it.
A very popular topic on the customs broker exam questions is who must make NAFTA certification, who must sign it. And back in the old days it used to be the exporter. Now I'm looking at your presentation, it seems to be like it's no longer true.
No, it can be, but there's also, I have to add to this, there's also going to be, at least in terms of Mexico, there are certain time factors that have to be taken into account, and it's going to be there's some rubs here, some wrinkles with Mexico. I just want to, again, I don't have the book in front of me, but I just want to alert the audience to that. When it comes to certifications, yes, an importer may submit an importer, exporter, producer certification right now. But again, you also have the benefit of these implementing instructions. You can take a look at that. And then again, if you do have questions about USMCA, realize that you can get binding rulings as well. You can get written determinations. And that's a good thing to do if you happen to be a businessman or a businesswoman. You want some kind of certainty, and you want something in writing from these governments. Why? Because you don't want surprises. You don't want increases in duties. You don't want things to go wrong. And you want to be able to take your time out to spend it making money rather than dealing with violations and so on. You pay attention to clients. So sometimes it is worth, just like anything that you're importing into the United States. If you've never imported anything into the United States before, a certain item, and again, you're talking about a prospective importation, what you should do is go to Part 177 of the Customs regulations, and that has to do with binding rulings. These are written determinations that are made by Customs. If you use magic language too, and you give an overview of what you bring into the U.S., and you give enough information to Customs, Customs will make a determination with regard to not just the classification number and the rate of duty, but Customs can also set you straight in terms of whether or not your item is subject to quota, whether it's subject to anti-dumping, and there's a lot of other things that binding rulings can do. And as a matter of fact, URI is going to be able to provide in the very near future a presentation. It's going to be on binding rulings, and you're all invited to attend that. It's going to be about 90 minutes, and what you should do, how you get them, and this is something that you should do. They're free, okay? And so take advantage of a service that's still provided by the government for free, and that's binding rulings, and it really can help you, and it can help you stay out of trouble.
Well, actually, I kind of disagree on the free part because, yes, it is in a way free, but it can be a trap because a lot of my clients and your clients, Kenny, when they ask for the binding ruling, what they are looking for is for us to carry the persuasive argument in their favor, because there is a lot of issues that can be interpreted in unfavorable or favorable way by the client, for, let's say, under the GRI rubric, General Rules of Interpretation. So taking advantage of free may cost in the long run if you decide to save on good memorandum of law.
No, I just say that, yes, in a way I misspoke. I'm just saying that customs doesn't charge for this, but you as the importer have to be familiar with classification, the rules of classification. And Yuri just mentioned something about the GRIs. That's the general rules of interpretation. And there's a couple of them that are loved by attorneys and loved by customs brokers, and they can help you. Again, what do attorneys like to do? They like to argue. And the same thing with some customs brokers. And if they know the GRIs, they can help get you a determination that you want. But you have to know how to argue to customs, and that's why people like Yuri are very valuable, because he's got a tremendous background. As a matter of fact, at one time he clerked for the United States Court of International Trade. He knows his stuff. And classification is not easy. It's not. It takes a while to learn. And then Yuri and other customs attorneys can do research. They can come up with other binding rulings. And binding rulings are only good. They can only apply to the person who applies for them. But again, Yuri, other customs attorneys can go through court cases. They can go through directives. They can go through customs. There's all kinds of things that they can go through. And again, what you're going to do is you're going to argue. And what you want as an importer, you want the lowest rate of duty possible. And attorneys can also help you decide whether or not you shouldn't be importing from a particular country, because the United States may have a free trade agreement. The United States has right now, I think, about 14 free trade agreements. And you can bring in things at preferential rate of duty as long as certain requirements are met. So this is something to think about. Why pay when you don't have to pay? And if customs does give you a hard time, that's when you seek out the services of a customs lawyer to argue on your behalf. And the same thing, too, with the customs broker's examination. This is something that Yuri can help you with, too. You may have answered a question correctly on the customs broker's examination, and customs disagrees. Customs asks for the best answer. You may have provided an answer that's correct, and quite often customs messes up. They give fact patterns that sometimes don't make sense, and quite often there can be two correct answers. So if you come close to passing the examination, you still fail, you should seek out the services of somebody like Yuri, who can actually appeal this matter or bring it to the attention of customs. Customs does a lot of wonderful things, but nobody is perfect. And I mean that. And quite often, things go wrong with examinations. So if you're just, shy, or you're a few questions shy of passing this very difficult examination, you don't pass, bring it to the attention of a customs attorney like Yuri or me. And what we do is we argue. We'll look to see whether or not, if that answer was correct, then you can make a pitch to customs. And quite often this happens. People who think they failed actually pass. And that's because a lot of times customs, they're putting together fact patterns. Sometimes customs doesn't necessarily have the best view of things. And I know earlier, in the week Yuri and I were speaking about proposed customs brokers regulations. Does U.S. Customs and Border Protection really understand what it is that customs brokers do? I think not. Customs has now proposed some regulations. There was a comment period that ended on August 4th. But they're proposing new regulations, and my take on it is, and I used to be part of customs. They don't really understand what it is.
Yeah, Kenny, that one I think we can dedicate the whole another stream to, because it's so vast. I think.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's pending, and you should know about that. And the other thing is too, if you want to know about brokers, there's an informed compliance publication called Customs Brokers, and this is something you should do if you're preparing to take the broker's examination. Know what you need to. You can find out what you need to do in the past. And does customs ask about customs brokers on examination? Yes, it can, and it quite often does.
Okay, Kenny, going back to the presentation, I think the electronic portion, I think it didn't change. Record keeping portion is still 5 years, right? Nothing changed.
Yes, it's still 5 years. In some cases, it may be more. Okay, it may be more, and sometimes you say yes, it's 5 years, but quite often.
Yeah, as a general rule of thumb.
Yeah, that's it. Right. That's it as a general rule. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. De minimis. So 7%. 7% was also general rule of thumb. I remember, because for some line items it was 10% as well. So. And customs used to love to test examinees they just throw like a line item which is not 7% and say, well, this is 7%, right? And of course the correct answer was no. It was 10%. So this time it elevated to 10%, there is not 7%, or it became 10% rule of thumb in a way?
It is, and that's one of the reasons that, again, you may want to seek a binding ruling determination before you import such items, so you're exporting them to another country. Just to be sure you have some kind of written confirmation, written determination. That's very important. And again, it's going to be important for you to keep records. You must have evidence. If you're questioned by customs, with regard to a transaction, you've got to have the documents to show that, yeah, the right things were done. And, may claim that you've got so much non-originating material in something, de minimis. Got to be able to prove that. Got to have some kind of records. Okay. So we also, something Yuri has up on a screen, origin verification procedures similar to NAFTA. Yeah, the USMCA permits CBP to verify whether a good entered with a claim for preferential tariff treatment qualifies. A lot of times people make, they say that something qualifies, and you find out that quite often the goods are just passing through a country. A lot of people believe that if goods come from a certain country, well, the origin of those goods is the country from which it came. That's not true. It may just be passing through. It could just be the country of export, not the country of origin. And there are all kinds of regulations and requirements with country of origin. How do you determine the country of origin of an item? And again, you have to ask yourself, is the item manufactured? Is it produced? Is it harvested? And these are basic questions, and you can look into Harmonized, and you can look in the regulations to find out.
So sounds like not too much change in the origin verification procedures.
Yeah, what they can do is basically it's tantamount to an audit. They're going to ask you. I've done this before. I've done this in case of. I've done it in case of goods coming in from Israel and Jordan and what have you. Customs wants proof. It wants evidence that these goods actually originate. They satisfy the requirements of country of origin. So these goods, when they come into the United States, will be afforded preferential treatment, and usually means zero rate of duty. But again, you've got to have evidence showing that, hey, the goods are actually from this country and they satisfy the requirements. So.
All right. So this is big. We have automotive, because automotive is huge, especially for Canadian and Mexican trade partners, because a lot of cars are being made in there and being sold here, right?
Yeah, the idea of NAFTA, when it was being changed to NAFTA 2.0. The administration kept saying it was going to, again, provide ways to make America great again. And how is this going to happen? Automobile manufacturing. As everybody knows, we at one time had Detroit, and it was quite a center, quite a location, automobile manufacturing. And the United States doesn't manufacture the way it did, but the administration was determined to make things better for automobile manufacturing in this country. So it has new requirements when it comes to content, etc., and this is supposed to make things better for the automobile industry here. You got to realize too that you have Mexican workers in some cases who making $3 an hour in the automobile trade, and the government stated that the U.S. government wanted things to be fairer. It wanted the U.S. to enjoy better treatment or have better treatment and have more jobs here and make it easier for investors here. So, I mean, it's complicated. If you want to read the USMCA, I mean, I recommend it if you run out of sleeping pills or heroin, you could do that. But it's lengthy and it's not easy to read. Fortunately, there are some publications you can get your hands on. And one of them comes from the United States Trade Representative's Office. You can go to www.ustr.gov, and they've got some publications out there that break down the new USMCA.
Yeah, and the message is the devil is in the details.
Always,
so
just
like with NAFTA, whatever you're specializing in, whether it's a car or whether it's a textile product or apparel product, you really have to look at the details. And just by way of example, how important it wasn't dealing with NAFTA, but one of the clients maintained factories in Central America, and they wanted to see if they can take care of DR CAFTA provisions, and believe it or not, they could. even though they to compete with Chinese, for example, factories, by still importing the Chinese yarn.
Yeah.
So they can take advantage of Chinese yarn imports and still go through all those origin qualification criteria and be able to take advantage of the DR CAFTA, for example, and compete with Chinese factories. Of course, the problem is the record keeping. You have to you have to keep the records, but
you have to have evidence. Yeah, you have to have records. Sure. And then always, again, the slide before, if you're importing wearing apparel or textiles, it's always been difficult. It's textiles and wearing apparel is always going to be looked at by customs. And you say, well, what's the point? How much textile and wearing apparel do we have here anymore? And it wasn't that long ago that the United States had substantial textile and wearing apparel manufacturing ability. Even goes back to the early 1990s. Most of the clothes were still made in the United States. Big change, almost 20 years later. You can look at people walking down the street. How much, look at the way they're dressed compared to the way people used to dress. You see what happened. We got a lot more, Chinese-made goods. China came into the World Trade Organization, and there went quotas and visas and everything else. And it was a 2-year. The United States and China came to an agreement. For 2 years, China was basically going to stifle itself. It was going to withhold sending all kinds of wearing apparel to the United States. That was then. This is now. And now you'd be hard-pressed to find American manufacturers of any kind of wearing apparel, textiles. The world has changed quite a bit right now. But again, customs, just like when it comes to footwear, wearing apparel, textiles always going to be looked at closely by customs. Footwear always going to be looked at closely. Agricultural goods always going to be looked at closely. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, why? We don't have anything left here. What's the point? But again, if you're an importer, you still have to do the right thing and have to adhere to all kinds of requirements.
A lot of members of international trade community, especially those in imports, I'm talking about customs brokers, importers, they really have a consensus that importing is bad for the country, but nevertheless they still do it.
Yes, no, that's very true. I mean, it started, it goes back
so the question is, why are you doing this? Why are you shooting yourself in the leg?
It has to do with, we can talk about it, maybe we'll have one night we'll discuss it. It has to do with neoliberalism, globalization. And this is an idea we spoke about, I think, last week. We were talking a little bit about Bretton Woods.
Yes,
the world changed after World War II. That's right. Yeah. And it was decided that the U.S. could outsource. We didn't need manufacturing. That everybody could work in the service industry, would be service providers. And if you look today, you saw all the anger in the United States. Let's talk about race, and it's a big factor, and there's all kinds of discrimination. And yes, it does exist, and it has always existed. But a lot of anger really stems from international trade. What happened to the industries that used to be here? Why are they no longer here? And that's a lot of people don't understand what happened, and they tune in to TV shows. There's never any talk about international trade. Never. Just like when international trade agreements, or even the Customs Modernization Act, NAFTA, when did it go through? When was it pushed through? At the end of the year. When people are busy thinking about the holidays, it's usually, this happens with all kinds of trade legislation, it's usually passed through parliaments and legislatures and whatever governmental bodies. When is it done? Usually at midnight when nobody's paying attention. Okay, this is something that the public is not really aware of, and they're angry. Their world has changed, and again, many of the reasons that the world has changed, the landscape looks so different, well, it's because of these trade agreements. It's because of things like the Modernization Act. It's all these things, but yet it's never talked about. People just don't know.
Well, hopefully we don't attract too many angry people, or at least angry people at us.
Well,
and one way we can do that is by making sure we educate the public about what's going on through events such as this one. What do you say? So the next
So again, textile compliance, as I told you, a big part of compliance. And again, you can go to cbp.gov and then /trade, and it's a cargo system messaging service. And then, you can receive this. I'll make this PowerPoint presentation available to you. But there are supporting documents you can make use of too. If you want to read about the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the final text, here it is. I mentioned the U.S. Trade Representative's Office. There it is. U.S. Customs and Border Protection. There's a lot of information about the USMCA out there, and NAFTA, of course. But sometimes you may want to take the time out to read it. As a matter of fact, when it came to NAFTA, just for your audience to know, there was only one member of the United States Congress who read NAFTA. Okay, and that was because Ralph Nader challenged him. I think Ralph Nader put up $10,000. And believe it or not, the man who read the NAFTA agreement was a Republican. I think he was from the Midwest. I could be wrong in location. But he was all for NAFTA until he read it, and then he was against it. And just want you to know that no other members of Congress had even bothered to read NAFTA before voting on it and passing it.
Well, someone read it.
Somebody did, and that's what happened, and he turned his back on it. This is interesting. Okay, and again, I'm not faulting the American public. I mean, sometimes it's just, where do they get their information from? And what you're going to have through this PowerPoint presentation, you'll be able to go to the sources, you'll be able to read it for yourself.
So, Kenny, if I'm correct, what you're suggesting is you're suggesting to use the document that we are going over today, the study guide, or the outline, as a starting point.
It may be difficult. Some of the stuff is you'd have to wade through it. It's not easy to. I mean, it has its own sort of vocabulary, and it's not easy reading, but it's there. And then if you search I can also, I'm not going to do it tonight, but I can recommend various places on the web to go to. If you want.
Kenny, I have your contact on the screen there, with your email too. So, what I'm trying to maybe ask is that I think this is a good starting point, but then whatever is pertinent to you, you just drill down, and this presentation provides a good jumping board to the.
I try to, and sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail, but I try to give a balanced view of it, and I just try to make, the attendees, people who want to learn about this, try to give them what I think is, a fairly balanced view of things. I'm not a rah-rah, not one way or the other, but it's important for them to know where it comes from. And then I went through this presentation has some of the major, it addresses the major parts of the agreement and what has changed. And I do make comparisons, NAFTA to the new NAFTA 2.0, the USMCA. And agriculture is quite big in the United States. There are a lot of provisions with regard to that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Automotive is big. Again, many promises have been made as to what this new agreement can do for the American public and the jobs it will provide. There are regional value requirements that have changed.
Yeah, remember we talked about the basics. The NAFTA had RVCs. So it just migrated its way over, except the formula changed.
Except they upped them, right? The percentage.
Just like de minimis, they upped from 7 to 10.
Yeah.
In general, generally speaking, you have 75 threshold instead of 62.5.
That's correct. Yeah. So that's highlighted with the slides too. And then Yuri, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and more about this, and this first of its kind has a labor value content rule. This is interesting, and this requires that a certain percentage of qualifying vehicles must be produced by employees making an average of $16 per hour, helping level the playing field for U.S. manufacturers and workers. So this is different. This is quite different from your usual trade agreement.
Kenya, this is even above the minimum wage, which is in New York, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times the minimum wages are a lot lower, and as you heard me talk about, many times workers in Mexico, they're working in the automobile industry, they're getting paid $3 an hour.
Now,
so
this is $16 per hour.
This is part of it, but again, you have to see whether or not these requirements are going to be observed. Is there going to be enforcement?
And so this $16 an hour threshold, is it for United States only or for
Yeah,
Canada and
this
Mexico?
one produced by helping level. Yeah, this is supposed to have been for Mexico, as a matter of fact. There's a lot in this agreement. There's a lot of requirements for Mexico with regard to unions and union organizing. And Mexico is basically advised it's got a lot to do. It had better change its act in many areas. And a lot of people saying that, is this really fair? I mean, it's really, is this what's to be expected in a trade agreement? But I guess Mexico wanted this. And then again, politics is always part of something. And there's pressure by the United States for Mexico to change some of the ways it does business. And that's what we have here.
And I had the pleasure to be attendant to the Ovid chapter of one of the Mexican cities. I believe it wasn't Ciudad Juarez, it was Monterrey, I think.
Monterrey.
Yeah, and even though it was a Zoom presentation and everyone was kind of in a jubilee mood, you could still see how difficult it is for our neighbors to the south to see this tough approach being implemented in their region for trade purposes.
Yeah. It's one thing to put words into an agreement. It's another to make certain that those words, those promises are realized, or those requirements are realized. Yeah. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. There's a lot here. I mean, I could go on hours on this kind of stuff. I don't want to.
Yeah, I think we don't want to make everyone bored or anything. And this is not a CLE. We don't have to go through all the slides. I would say because we've already been out for the hour and a half, so that's quite a bit.
Yeah, but what we can do, if the audience, if the listeners out there want, we can put on a presentation, a NAFTA 2.0 USMCA presentation, if you're interested, and it is going to be important. I mean, Yuri's been, and rightfully so, concentrating on the customs brokers examination. Right now, NAFTA will be looked at, but
yeah. And I just want to put it out there. Me and Ken are preparing a number of this stream is kind of like an ad hoc way to bring the message out about what's out there, but in more serious, in more coherent way, we do plan to make this. For example, I on my end try to do to put together the customs broker license courses. I'm hoping that Ken will be a part of it too. I'm hoping that I will take part in some of Ken's presentation, which he does in many academic circles. So I think we can pretty much say that this is a sneak preview of what's to come.
Yes.
And this is something that which will be further worked on. But Kenny, maybe you can say a few words, if as a summary, if you were to say, all right, so NAFTA gone, USMCA is around. What's the I guess a paragraph takeaway of what to expect from the international trade community, if anything, be experience anxiety, experience excitement. What should the members of trade community carry out from today's
trade community should be aware that perhaps the most important thing to it is the new certificate that's got to be made use of. Can't use the old NAFTA form. That's gone. Can't use it at all. Customs is going to permit that. But we'll make the new form available to you. One, it contains the magic language. We'll also make available to you a PDF containing the implementing instructions, and we can also put together something, put a list together of sources, free sources of information for you. And of course, what we're going to do in the very near future, we're going to make a presentation with regard to the NAFTA 2.0 USMCA, because it is, it is important in real life. Yes, we have a broker's examination right now. Got to know about NAFTA. There's still entries that are subject to NAFTA. Anything made, July, I think it was June 30th, 2020 and before NAFTA, but anything from July 1st on is now USMCA. Again, one thing we all have to be thankful for, the changes were not monumental. However, there are significant changes in USMCA that are jamming up companies right now. And that people need to be made aware of certain things, and that's primarily the certificate. And maybe what we could do in the near future, we'll devote maybe a half hour, an hour to the certificate, because that really is the linchpin for a lot of people involved in anything having to do with the USMCA.
My understanding was the whole idea of it was to make it flexible, so you can put the stuff like on a commercial invoice instead of having a separate piece of paper. But
you can do that, yeah. And the other, that's true. I mean, a certificate. The other thing that's going to be necessary, and I have seen this. I was dealing with a company recently. They got into trouble because when they were putting together a certificate, they used more than 6 digits, an international number. On the document, they used 8. And that's wrong, because you have to realize that the Harmonized Tariff schedule is not going to match Mexico's, Harmonized. It's not. It's going to be different. The full-blown number for the United States system is 10 digits. However, if you want to play it safe when it comes to exporting, you're only going to be giving numbers out on a 6-digit level, and this company got jammed up because some of the people thought they were doing the right thing by going above and beyond, and they started giving out 8-digit numbers rather than 6, and it didn't jibe with what the Mexicans viewed as being proper. So they got into trouble that way. So I do know that a lot of people are worried about the magic language in the certificate. You'll have that. And they don't know about the implementing instructions. We have that. We'll make it available to you, and we'll tell you where you can also go for additional information about the USMCA.
All right.
Okay?
So you heard Martin Ken Behr.
Yeah, the other thing I just want to tell your audience, listen, I have, it sounds strange. Yuri calls me Kenny. I go by the name Kenny. I usually use my middle name. Martin is my legal name, and unfortunately I'm also the third, which sounds absolutely stupid, but I go by the name Kenny. And again, if you a little bit about me, you can look at the PowerPoint presentation. I've done a number of things, but I was with Customs for a number of years at different ports of entry, land, air, and seaports. And the last place I was at was actually the Port of New York, 4601 Newark, Port of New York, Newark. I worked at the World Trade Center. I've been at JFK Airport, Newark Liberty. I was on a Canadian border, Champlain, Rouse's Point, also Buffalo, Niagara Falls. And sort of a family thing. My grandfather was actually a customs supervisor. He was long out of the service by the time I got there. But it's something I enjoy. It's very interesting. And again, it's not just customs when you're thinking about importing or exporting. There's all kinds of other agencies. So there's always more than just customs regulations. There's other agencies' regulations as well. And it can be really enjoyable. International trade can be a lot of fun. You get to meet all kinds of people. And, if you have a passion for a couple of products, a good way to satisfy your impulses and get involved with this kind of stuff. And as I pointed out, a lot of stuff is not rocket science. And if you're not sure of something, you can get help. And a lot of it can be given to you by the various governments. You just have to know how to ask. And that's what Yuri and I are here too. We can help you get the kind of information that you need to make certain that your business is successful. And if you have problems with customs, you have problems with things, that's what we're here for too. It's not just customs, but it could be the FDA. As a matter of fact, we'll be giving a presentation on the FDA sometime soon, and the Food Safety Modernization Act, and importing food items and cosmetics, etc. And a big part of importing concerns the FDA. Roughly 75% of everything that comes in, in some shape, manner, or form, touches the FDA. It's called a restricted item. But you have other agencies out there. The United States Department of Agriculture. You have Consumer Product Safety Commission. You have all kinds of agencies involved. I think it's Customs, and I think Customs has memorandum of understanding and forces. I think it's 47 agencies, import regulations. A lot of agents.
I think more than that.
Departments and agencies have a lot to do with importing and exporting as well.
Yeah, basically, just to put it out there, me and Martin Ken Behr, we had an agreement that when we will be making those presentations, I'll be calling him Kenny because we go back some time and we work together.
Call me Kenny. As a matter of fact, the new materials are going to have the name Ken.
But
call me Ken, so I'd let the audience call me Kenny.
Okay, you're generous, but all I'm saying is that I can allow myself to be more informal with my partner, my colleague, and a friend than as opposed to someone in a courtroom against whom Mr. Martin Behr makes an argument.
Yeah, I can do that. And then when you stick the third on, it sounds absolutely preposterous, but that's the way it is. I basically hate the third and all the other nonsense, but that's what it is. So again, Kenny is, more than enough.
Okay, so very well. So we'll be coming out with a great content in the future. FMSA is coming out. I think we have some interesting speakers along the way too, which can also give speech on other issues, other pressing issues of the day. So yeah, I think we're doing good. We'll keep rolling out those NAFTA videos. Ken's study guide is attached to those NAFTA videos because it's very much relevant. If you're studying for the customs broker license exam, keep on studying. Our job is to make it easier for you, so keep an eye out, and we'll be in touch next week.
The one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt, Yuri. The one thing that Yuri and I are also working on, we're going to be doing some courses, online courses, and this is something that you may want to think about. They probably run 8 to 10 weeks. We're putting them together right now, importing and exporting. It's something to think about, and we'll present more information to you. And again, we're also looking to have some pretty well-known guests on board. We know some interesting characters out there, and we hope to make international trade interesting for you.
Okay, so I think we can end it right there, and wish everyone a good night.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.